Well, it's great to be with you all. As you can see, we've got a bit of a crowd here today. A lot of enthusiasm for the announcement, the budget announcement that we're making today. I'm delighted to be here with Sarah Court from ACCC and Katrina Lowe, Deputy Commissioner of the ACCC, who've been enthusiastic supporters for our action on scams. We've also got representatives behind us from the consumer organisations, from banks, from the telecommunications and social media platforms. We're all here for one reason, and that's to take the fight up to the scammers. Over $3 billion a year is being lost to scams and consumer frauds, and until now, too often, Australians, households and small businesses have had to fight them on their own. Well, that's going to stop. Our policy to fight scams, whole of government policy, is about ensuring that we are taking the fight up to scammers to ensure that consumers are better protected, and across government, across the public sector and the private sector, we are working cooperatively, we are working together to share our information and our resources to take the fight up. So this $56 million announcement to establish a national anti-scam centre is about taking that fight to the scammers. It involves three things. First, it's about ensuring that when reports are made, wherever they're made, whether it's to the National Anti-Scam Centre, whether it's to ASIC, whether it's to a state or federal police organisation, or to a bank or telecommunications company, we are sharing the information so that the people who need to know that a scam is out there in the field are able to act on it quickly. As soon as money leaves a person's bank account, it's almost too late. So this is all about ensuring that we can knock the scams on the head before they get out there in the field, and that we can be sharing information amongst law enforcement, amongst banks, telecommunications companies, the social media platforms and the regulators to act as quickly as is humanly possible to ensure that we don't let the scams spread. In addition to that, we're going to establish fusion cells. Think of them as a hit squad. This is about getting experts together across regulators, across law enforcement, across the finance sector, telecommunications and social media platforms, bringing their expertise together for a short-term action, a hit squad, to go after a particular sort of scams. So in the budget last Tuesday, we allocated funds to ensure that we could bring those resources together and take the fight ups to the scammers through the fusion cell. And in addition to that, ensuring that the consumers have the information, and we're educating consumers on how they can protect themselves against these criminals who are trying to rob them of their hard-earned cash. So this is an important initiative. It is working hand in hand with the initiative that my colleague Michelle Rowland has announced earlier, which is about a caller ID registry. If you like, this is a whitelist of approved numbers. If somebody is calling you and pretending to be your bank, that call or that SMS message will be blocked. An SMS message will be blocked unless it's coming through from the authorised number, from a bank, from a government agency, and we intend to expand that over time. We anticipate that as a result of these initiatives, the actual reported number of scams will probably increase. More attention, greater faith from the Australian community that something is going to be done about scams will probably lead to an increase in scams reporting. Will probably lead to an increase in scam reporting. Over the last 12 months, the ACCC advises me that we've had close to 250,000 scams reported on an annual basis. We know that that's probably the tip of the iceberg, because a lot of people don't report. We're encouraging Australians to report it. If you think you have been scammed, report it. Because if they've attacked you, they're probably going to attack somebody else as well. And the whole idea of our National Anti-Scam Centre is about knocking them on the head, trying to act quickly and decisively before the harm spreads throughout the community. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Minister, how will the collaboration between government and private sector work together in practice when these scams emerge?
A couple of ways. Firstly, through sharing of information. Some of this is already occurring, but we're going to lift it up to a whole new scale to ensure that when the Commonwealth, through any of its regulatory agencies or law enforcement receives information, that it is shared through the National Anti-Scam Centre, through trusted protocols, and that is also distributed particularly onto banks, to consumer organisations, so that they can warn their customers or warn the people that they advocate on behalf of. Acting quickly limits the harm. Once the money has left a bank account, it's almost impossible to get it back again.
So speed is the name of the game here. Will this new centre result in a reduction in overall scam losses, and if so, are there any forecasts by how much?
The whole objective is about reducing scam losses. I anticipate that as a result of this initiative, reporting is going to go up. Let's just be clear about it. As a result of this initiative, reporting will probably go up because we know we're only getting and hearing about the tip of the iceberg at the moment. We want to know more so that we can act faster and act better to ensure that we can reduce the losses. Yes, of course, the whole objective of the National Anti-Scam Centre is about reducing consumer harm, reducing consumer losses.
How will this new centre help people who have already been scammed? Is there any part of it that will work with them or target to try maybe get them some of their money back? Or?
You know, it's almost impossible to get money back once it's been lost. We are successful in some cases about recovering money. And of course, what we want to do, and when I talk to consumers who have been scammed, when I talk to people who have been scammed, they say, I want to ensure that this doesn't happen to somebody else. So a part of sharing the information is about ensuring we limit the harm and ensure somebody else doesn't get whacked by a scammer as well.
Absolutely. Will the private sector, including the banks, be forced to pay more compensation to scam victims, or is that still not being considered by the government?
Over the course of the year, we'll be working on codes of practice for banks, for finance organisations, for social media platforms and telecommunications companies. Many of them are already doing good stuff, but we think we can lift the bar. And we think we have to lift the standard to ensure that everybody, whether they're a bank or a customer of a bank, everyone knows what their obligations and responsibilities are. And we've seen through recent reporting from ASIC on this that there is an enormous variance between what certain banks are doing and what other banks are doing. As an example, we need to lift the bar to ensure that there is a high standard required of banks and financial organisations so that consumers can have confidence and know exactly what they have to do to protect themselves and what their bank is going to do to protect them as well.
So I took that as a yes, then it's being considered.
We've already said that we're going to be working on codes of practice.
Okay. Will this new centre change the way scams are being investigated by law enforcement?
Yeah, law enforcement will have more information and better information, and they'll have the tools to work more closely with our regulators and with the private sector as well.
Is there anything you could tell us about how the centre will detect or deter scams?
So the whole basis of the National Anti-Scam Centre is about improving the flow of information. So receiving reports from consumers through a web portal or through other reports through other agencies, but also sharing intelligence that is currently being collected, whether it's by banks, telecommunications companies, social media platforms, creating a safe environment and safe protocols for sharing intelligence will enable us to do a better job of protecting consumers.
Anything you could tell us about the cutting-edge technology that the centre will be using?
If you like, I can call on Katrina Lowe, the Deputy Commissioner, to answer some of these more technical questions, or anyone she wants to delegate it to.
Sure, yeah.
But look, in short, the investment announced by the Treasurer in the budget last week is about providing a significant uplift in the IT capacity and the systems capacity of the ACCC, and ensure that they can be linked to all of the other information collection agencies, whether it's ASIC, whether it's the Federal Police or other agencies, ensuring that this is happening in real time. Invite Katrina if you want to say anything.
Thank you. As the Minister has mentioned, a significant portion of the funding that's been allocated is for a technology build, which will obviously take place over the coming months and years, and that will in essence join together a significant number of people that make up the scams ecosystem to enable prompt reporting between those organisations. In the meantime, we will be enhancing the current manual process to speed up the process of information sharing whilst the technology build is occurring.
Right. But is there any kind of new technology that you can tell us about? Would it maybe incorporate use of AI or similar technologies to detect faster and more accurately?
These are all the sorts of initiatives that we're speaking of. Partly the technology build will in effect be building pipes between existing sources of information. One of the key things that we want this centre to do is integrate existing efforts rather than in any way duplicating them. We are, of course, also working with actors across the systems, platforms, financial institutions and telcos around detection. And there's no doubt that people in the ecosystem are starting to look at the sort of tools like AI that they can use, and also behavioural techniques to more quickly identify and disrupt scams, and that is part of the conversation.
The Minister mentioned $3 billion lost to scams last year. What we've been doing clearly isn't working. How is this going to be different? Sharing the information, obviously, do you think is going to make that much of a difference in terms of the losses?
We are seeing a lot of people making a lot of effort to disrupt scams, but at the moment that effort is all happening effectively in isolation. What this centre will do is bring together and coordinate that effort and point it in the same direction, and there is an enormous amount that can be gained by that cooperation and centering of effort.
One last question for the Minister. Can the Scam Centre penalise Australian entities that don't do enough, don't go far enough to prevent scams?
Look, the ACCC and ASIC already have plenary powers which enable them to address some of this stuff. Our code of practice is going to be lifting the bar to ensure that there are more regulatory tools available to the ACCC, to ASIC and others. Of course, the objective, I've got to say, is not to fine somebody. The objective is to stop the egregious behaviour happening in the first place. So the whole idea of setting up the Scam Centre, working cooperatively across the economy, the whole idea of putting in place codes of practice is not to whack social media platforms, telcos, banks with huge fines, is to get them working together and get them working quickly in the interests of consumers. But yeah, if they haven't met their high obligations, of course, consequences will follow from that.
And is there any date when will these new tough codes of practice for the industry be put in place?
That's a this year job. Okay, so we're starting work with industry. Some work is already underway, and initial consultations will formalise that over the months to come. I've got to say, my colleague Michelle Rowland in the telecommunications area has already started some work in this area through some of the regulations that they've put in place and the codes that they've put in place around scam phone calls, for example. So it's not like nothing has been done, but what this is all about is taking everything that's been happening, perhaps disparately, been happening in the private sector, been happening in states or in parts of the Commonwealth, bringing it together and supercharging the effort to take on the scammers. Great, thanks so much. There are colleagues here from some of the consumer organisations and others, if you wanted to grab them, but
yeah, we're happy to have them.
Sure. I'm sure they've come all the way from other places. No?
That's all.
Stephanie Tonkin, CEO from Consumer Action Law Centre. We welcome the government's strong investment in the National Anti-Scam Centre, and we hope to see mandatory laws that can prevent scammers from reaching scams victims. The toll on scams victims is devastating. People are losing their entire life savings to scams. It's an emotional and financial toll that we hear on our frontline services every day. So what we need to see is some action and some compensation for scams victims. We're calling for mandatory reimbursement of scams losses, except for in cases where scam victims, through no fault of their own, are scammed. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Andy White.
Just get one the other way. Sorry to interrupt.
That's right, no problem. Andy White, CEO at Australian Payments Network. We're really enthusiastic about some of the measures that the Minister's outlined. We've seen fusion cells work elsewhere, so the hit squads have worked in other jurisdictions. We've got some experience of that in bringing together financial institutions and law enforcement, and actually law enforcement internationally. So we're really keen to see that up and running through the National Anti-Scam Centre. I think the other real positive here is thinking about scams as a life cycle. The problem for many Australians is that they're socially engineered, and so actually getting the whole of the ecosystem involved, whether it's financial institutions, digital platforms, telecommunication companies, is really important so that we can stop scams at source. Thank you.